Okay, so hello everyone. Today we're going to be going over some assessments and different grading tools that they're using for kindergarten through second grade in schools, especially in PE.
Okay, so I'll start. So my name is Sam, and I'm just going to take us through like what assessments are, just so we get a basic understanding. Assessments are tools that can be used to not only assess students' understanding of learning outcomes, but also to assess how we are doing as educators. There are many ways to assess students in PE and a variety of criteria to take into account. Assessments serve to provide feedback to both the learner and the educator on what students are learning and areas that need to be revisited before moving on. Our topic will be focusing mainly on the kindergarten through second grade levels. This is a very crucial age group as fundamental movement skills, or FMS, are highly developing at this time. Providing assessments to these students is essential to creating developmentally appropriate lessons and plans to give the students the highest quality of physical education possible. Although psychomotor assessments are very helpful in seeing students' current ability levels, it is also important to consider cognitive fitness, affective, and social emotional learning assessments as well. These areas contribute to the whole child and help us understand how students are thinking, feeling, and behaving during physical activity, not just how they perform a skill. For example, a student might excel in running or jumping, but struggle with teamwork or emotional regulation in group settings. By including SEL and affective assessments, we can identify those needs and address them intentionally. Fitness assessments, while often used in older grades, can also be adapted for young students to introduce healthy habits early on. Another important aspect of assessment is that it doesn't have to be formal. Observations, checklists, peer assessments, and even student reflections can provide valuable insight into their progress. Using visuals, movement based tasks, and simplified language can make assessments more age appropriate and less intimidating for younger students. Our goal for students is to create well rounded, physically literate individuals from a young age. Assessments can be the first way to ensure students are on the right track and also help us learn what we as educators need to do to help the students improve. Ultimately, they support informed instruction, meaningful feedback, and continuous growth for both students and teachers.
Yeah, I definitely agree with what you said about how, especially at the younger age, it's really important to not focus just on the skill, but there are other things to look at. And that's why these assessments are really also important to look at because there's so many different ways to assess them. Uh, what I read about was how assessment in physical education for students in grades K-2 should be centered around supporting the student's development in a way that feels natural, encouraging, and age appropriate. At this early stage, children are just beginning to build fundamental movement skills like running, jumping, balancing, and throwing. Assessments should be focused on observing and guiding progress in these areas rather than assigning grades or comparing students against strict performance benchmarks. The most effective assessments in early elementary PE are informal and formative in nature. Teachers often use tools like observation checklists, peer and self-evaluations, or simple rubrics to track whether or not students are developing basic motor skills, following directions, participating safely, and showing effort. These assessments help teachers adjust instruction and provide immediate, personalized feedback that support each child's growth. Because children at this age are still developing physically, emotionally, and cognitively, assessments should not be high pressure or overly complex. Instead, the emphasis is on helping students feel confident and successful in movement, laying the foundation for lifelong physical activity. Assessment strategies can also include movement games or exit slips with pictures that let students self-assess how they felt during a class and how well they think they performed a skill. It's also important to consider the social and emotional aspects of learning in PE. For example, you can assess whether a student is working well with others, showing good sportsmanship, or building confidence. These behaviors can be assessed through ongoing observation and reflective discussions. While early elementary PE doesn't typically include formal testing, it is important for the student's development that they are still being evaluated. One of the challenges, however, is that many teachers may not receive enough training on how to assess young children in a meaningful way, especially across all learning domains, including the physical, cognitive, and affective domains. As a result, assessments might end up being limited to checking off whether a child can do a skill rather than capturing a more complete picture of their learning journey. Ideally, assessments at this level should be low stakes, embedded into daily activities, and focused on helping students grow at their own pace. When done well, they can help create a positive, inclusive PE environment where every child feels seen, supported, and motivated to learn.
I really like how you highlighted the fact that there's an emphasis that we need to make our students feel comfortable and confident in order to succeed, especially because a lot of students don't enjoy PE classes that aren't already involved in sports or like movement. They're more into other curriculars. So I feel like it's good that these assessments would bring out that. I also liked how you talked about the fact that there's assessments that show peer evaluation skills. So peer evaluations, which would require the students to then like develop personable skills with their like classmates and like learn how to speak to each other and like give positive feedback too, not just like negative. I feel like those are like life skills that they can use inside and out of PE.
Yeah, definitely.
I also like how you mentioned that it could be low stakes because then students aren't afraid to like try or challenge themselves differently than they usually would.
Yeah, it's really important to get the students to just motivated to just try, even if they may not be able to succeed. It's important that they know that they're able to do it.
So I had gone into an article that builds off how we discussed about the different assessments that we can use in early childhood level PE classes, and how assessments are not only beneficial for the students, but it also can be beneficial as parents or educators to adapt our lessons. As an educator, these assessments help guide our teaching. So without them, we are not sure of our students' base levels, and it allows us to have knowledge and identify the areas that they need more growth or support depending on the students, which elaborates on that whole developing an environment that's inclusive to all students. They're all going to be at different levels, and we're going to have to adapt our teaching to each student. In some grades, though, assessment reflections lessons can be adapted in real time based on our students' movements, cooperation, and ability to listen to that task for the day. So we should also change our assessments if we notice it's not working in real time. We can also see the students' progressions over time using pre and post exams, as I stated earlier, having a base point. So we can see the students' growth over the years, month, or semesters. As a student assessment allows for the students to then see their own growth and be able to see the areas they've improved on, which kind of gives them a sense of accomplishment and motivation to continue and gain their confidence to try these tasks. So they can see that they never were able to kick a ball and now they're scoring every single time. Parents also benefit from this use of assessments. As educators, we can inform our parents then of their child's learning process by sharing information like your child has become proficient in static balance. They learned how to underhand throw. They demonstrate positive interactions with their classmates and teams. And this helps the parents have a better understanding of what's going on in PE, not just, oh, my kid's kicking a ball around all day. And they're more connected to their child's growth. We also have to implement the grading system. So in K through second grade, there are specific policies that differ depending on the schools. They can either use letter grades or percentages. That doesn't really align with our objectives for teaching in a developmentally appropriate manner. Some school districts have decided to turn from using these standard grading systems. In the study from current issues in education, the standard-based grading has provided more meaningful feedback to our students and their families. It highlights the master of a skill rather than they can perform it properly in just one attempt. As a a future PE educator, this grading policy may look like the student is developing in their balance and their dribbling skills, is showing proficiency in teamwork, and is at the beginning level of throwing or needs improvement on. So it highlights not only the areas of growth, their strengths, but it also breaks down the needs where they need to improve to to gain more learning. And this is not just a number grade. This grading makes it more specific to each student's learning. Grading and assessments in early childhood PE can be designed to support the students and focus on them as a whole, not just specific skills like walking or kicking. We also want to touch on the psychomotor, cognitive, affective, and social aspects, making the students well-rounded. Throughout the proper use of assessments, we can create PE environments where all students are more motivated and feel successful by their accomplishments. Some pros that have been found in this is that educators are now guided for the additional support for certain students, whereas without assessments, it's kind of hard to tell. The parents can then communicate with the educators and be aware of the learning. It allows the students to reflect on their own abilities and be motivated and see their growth, the growth and confidence develops. And some cons that some people have seen is that it's very time consuming as an educator to do individualized assessments. That's why using peer assessments would be more time efficient. And if there are too many assessments throughout the school year, it kind of takes away from the students' involvement because they feel like everything's just a grade. And that's all I had for my article.
Yeah, I definitely agree like with a lot of the pros. Because like you said, there's a lot of negative connotation when it comes to assessment. So making students like aware that it could be a good thing just for their own learning and increase their own confidence and motivation is definitely a good thing.
I really like when you're talking about being adaptive, trying to include all, no matter their skills. If you have to say you have something planned for today, but you gotta change it on the fly, whether it's switching the ball or switching how you have it set up, trying to really get everybody involved in what you're doing.
Yeah, based off that, how you were saying, like, you have to change it in the moment. That's also like an importance of just like evaluating your classroom and like kind of doing these motions throughout your lesson. Like, if you notice half your class can't understand the task or can't grasp the concept, just taking those steps back and then progressing up to that.
I also I noticed when you said grading specific to the student because all students are different. You can't, especially in PE, it's not like you're testing them on math where everybody's doing the same exact math problem. Some student physically might not be able to do the same thing another student can do. So I really like how you grading them specifically different based on their abilities. It makes a difference.
And that could also be a pro as a physical educator as well, because like if you realize a lot of students aren't completing the task the way you intended them to, you could change the task like, on the spot, like he was saying.
Okay, so I'm going to sum this all up now that we talked about. So, in conclusion, assessments in early childhood education, grades K-2, serve as essential tools for supporting students' development across multiple domains: psychomotor, cognitive, affective, and social. These assessments are not about assigning grades, but rather guiding and tracking the growth of each student in a fundamental movement skills, teamwork, and overall physical literacy. They provide valuable feedback to educators, helping to adapt lessons and ensure that each student's needs are met. Additionally, assessments help students recognize their progress, boosting their confidence and motivation to continue improving. Parents benefit from the assessments as well, gaining insight to their child's development and growth. While formal tests isn't appropriate for young students, formative low stakes assessments like observation, checklists, and self evaluations can create a supportive and inclusive PE environment. These assessments allow for individualized attention and promote a positive learning experience for all students. However, it is important to balance assessments to avoid overwhelming students and teachers with excessive evaluations. Ultimately, assessments in early childhood PE should be developmentally appropriate, focused on the whole child, and designed to foster lifelong physical activity and growth.
I really like how you mentioned that the assessments are for also, once again, like the teachers, parents, and the child. And also, like, now I'm realizing that it also helps with the school districts to like evaluate if teachers are doing their jobs when they do have the students. If a teacher has students that are all at the same level and all getting A's, like are they really all earning those or are they just not progressing or like it helps the school evaluate more what's going on inside the classroom without having to always be in the classroom observing the educators.
I agree with that. I also feel like it holds the teachers more accountable to providing like developmentally appropriate tasks instead of just whatever they feel like doing.
I also think it's cool how like Some of the assessments, like a peer assessment, you get to like work with a partner and you get to practice that yourself, and you can see through a different, like through your own peer if they might be doing it better than you or in a more smooth way. You can see how they're doing it and benefit off that.
Yeah, the peer assessments is a cool way because you can learn from your peers. You could also help your peers rather than always whoever the teacher is in front of the classroom, like showing you and telling you what to do.
Yeah, and I feel like some students also learn better like that, just not being like lectured so much or like hearing it from like an adult perspective. They're better off with like a friend telling them. And then I feel like it's also helping the friend or the student classmate because then they have to be able to identify that skill and then or a component of the skills. And then they're also checking their cognitive. So it's like assessing multiple things at once.
The students may be also like they might feel more comfortable and less stressed out when they're working with a peer rather than the teacher.
Yeah, I agree with that as well. Like especially like if it's their friend they're working with, they could use like language that they're more comfortable with. That's like maybe help them understand when they wouldn't if it was the teacher explaining it.
Also, working with a friend, it just kind of goes back to the affective domain where if you're helping out another peer, that's just another great thing about PE. You get to learn more of those life skills like teamwork and just helping out other people.
So I believe that we went over everything regarding the assessments and the different assessment tools, the different grading systems, and how it can affect and shape the PE environment for kindergarten, second grade students that leads up to higher levels and their growth and assessing that and also keeping our educators accountable. I think that's all we have for today.